Hello and welcome to my channel. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy the next 3 stories and I hope you're keeping well. I drive part-time for Uber Eats. I'm a college student, so it's a great job to work around my school schedule. This happened on the night after my classes. It was probably 11 PM and I didn't have class until late in the afternoon the next day. So I was planning on staying up late and grinding out as many orders as I could. At 1 AM I got a rare grocery order to pick up from a 7-Eleven and drop off to some address 15 minutes away. The directions took me through a few neighbourhoods, going all the way to the back that led up to the woods. Before I stopped at the end of a gravel road, I looked at the address on the app and it said it was down this road, but all I saw was a bunch of safety cones and construction things with no street signs. I carefully went down, turning my brights on and navigating through until I reached the last turn. This was even more sketchy though, being more of a path than a road. I looked more closely at the map again and it was clearly telling me the address was down this way. I lifted my head and looked further down the path, and as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I started to notice a structure at the end of it. It kind of resembled a house, but there was definitely something off about it. I then looked around and started to notice more houses there. Wasn't enough light coming from my headlights for me to see them all, but based off what I could, it looked like this was a community of new built houses in construction. Knowing this, I figured since the house on my GPS was one of the first on the path, maybe it was already complete. I turned and started heading down, pulling into an empty cul-de-sac with a single house on it. Up close now, it was definitely not complete. At least not fully complete. The front of it did look nearly done though, having a door and everything, which made this already hard to figure out. At the end of the day though, all I had to do was deliver the stuff where I'm told to, and not to worry about someone else's housing situation. I parked and got out with the groceries, walking up to the front door and knocking. All the lights were off, and it was completely quiet, enough to make me feel a bit uneasy. I set down the bags and turned around to get back to my car, but in the side of my view I saw something move by the trees. I stopped for a moment, staring at the darkness in the woods. Whatever I saw wasn't moving anymore. I started walking quickly, getting into my car and turning it on. As soon as the headlights flashed, I saw a man standing right where I'd seen the movement in the woods. He was staring in my direction, watching intently as I started to back out. I felt my heartbeat rising as I looked at the man and wasn't paying attention to the road. I only rolled back about 10 feet before I felt a huge bump on the back tyres, followed again by my front. It was enough to make the entire car rock back and forth for a second, but my adrenaline was rushing too much for me to even get a good look at where and what caused it. I pressed on the gas harder, getting off the path and onto a gravel road. Once I made it into the normal neighbourhood again, it was more obvious that my car was shaking and bumping, and there was no doubt that I had several flat tyres. I was able to pull off somewhere where I felt more safe, and then I called the police. They searched the address and the Uber Eats account, but the address was unfinished property that was not lived in, and the account was a throwaway. They did find several large sharpened metal objects on the path, though likely placed after I pulled in as an attempt to get me to stop on the path. What they were attempting to do once they had me stuck out there in the woods is hard to say. Maybe rob me or maybe something else, but at least I didn't have to find out. I was driving for a Domino's pizza delivery. It was a slow night, so I was actually spending a decent amount of time inside the shop waiting for orders to come in for me to deliver. Just after 10 PM, a man walked in and came up to the counter. He looked like he was in his early 30s. but was extremely sleep deprived and maybe even drunk. My co-worker was at the counter helping him with the order, and I was standing in the back organising the pizza boxes, but after seeing his appearance, I listened in on their conversation. He seemed timid and uneasy about something, as he made a simple request for a medium pizza. But then he added on that he'd like it to be delivered, and then handed my co-worker a slip of paper. Right after the order was sent through, the man walked out. The paper just had the address written on it, but was kind of odd because who wouldn't remember their own address? Also, it's not every day that you get a customer coming into your shop to order for delivery to their house. Anyways, 10 minutes later I boxed up the pizza and got on the road. It didn't take long for me to notice a strange car behind me. It was the only other car on the road, and they were constantly speeding up and slowing down, like they were having trouble staying at the same speed. Once I saw them swerving too, first thing I thought was they were drunk, and how the man at the shop looked drunk too. It seems stupid now, but at the time I really thought it was just a coincidence. When I got to the neighbourhood, the car behind me pulled off to the side of the road and parked. 30 seconds later, I pulled into the driveway of what looked like another house and stepped up to the front porch, and I knocked again, and after a couple of minutes waiting, someone finally answered. It was a different man from the one I seen at the shop that ordered the pizza. "I have a Domino's delivery from Matthew," I said. The man stared at me with very wide open eyes, and I noticed that he looked very similar to the way the other man looked. Sleep deprived and drunk. It took him a few seconds to respond. "Oh yeah, of course. Thank you," he said, quietly reaching out for the pizza. I gave it to him and he looked at me like he was going to say something else, but he didn't. He just continued with his dull look. I turned around and saw a guy in the hood jogging down the sidewalk, just 2 houses away, but he was looking right at us. I quickly went back to my car and the man at the door stepped outside onto the porch, like he was going to follow me. I got in and started backing out, but the guy in the hood went right behind my car to block me from leaving. The other one then started running towards me, and in the heat of the moment I just stepped on the pedal to go in reverse. The guy behind the car jumped out of the way at the last second, and both of them started yelling and chasing my car onto the road. In the street light, it became clear that the man in the hood was the guy who came into the pizza shop. With them still running at the front of my car though, I had to reverse dangerously fast down the street until I could safely make a 3-point turn and get away. I called the cops, and within the hour both men were arrested for attempted robbery. Their plan was clearly made while drunk, because they thought by ordering at the shop we somehow wouldn't think it was them, because it was delivery order, even though we had their name and address. It really made no sense, but according to the record they had pulled multiple robberies before. I know they only had bad intentions for me, so I was really lucky to get out of there without being hurt. I picked up my first job this year as a delivery driver for Pizza Hut. I'm 16, so this was only a part-time job that I did after school, a couple of days a week. I chose Pizza Hut though because it's not that busy nowadays, and I didn't want to have a job where I was stressing out all of the time. The first months passed with nothing of interest. It was a very boring and repetitive job that left most days as forgettable. But then I had one experience that I'll never forget. It was a Friday and we got an order in just before closing. The address wasn't too far, but it went through a part of town that I almost never went to. This neighbourhood was different from the rest, not having tons of houses or stores in it, which gave me no reason to ever go there. While driving through, I kept checking my GPS as it took me all the way through the neighbourhood, turning down seemingly every road until it finally said I arrived. But something was off. On my left was a row of maybe 6 or 7 houses, and on the right was a path leading to a park. The waypoint on the GPS was showing up on the right side, so I double checked by searching the address on Google, and it was the actual address of the park. I parked on the side of the road and picked up the pizza, getting out and walking up to the path. With a better look, I could see that it was just a walking path, not leading to any sort of playground or anything, which is where I expected to see a group of kids that had ordered pizza, but instead there was a guy sitting on a bench a little ways down, waving at me. I started walking over, still a bit unsure about it. As I got closer, he stood up and started sniffing through his wallet for cash. The fact that he was alone on a walking path at night for some reason and needing a pizza delivery here was odd, to say the least, so I was skeptical when I went up and greeted him. We began exchanging everything, but during the interaction the guy started talking to himself, repeating the same phrases like "I'm okay" and "everything's going to be okay," which made me feel like I kinda needed to ask him if he was okay. He stopped talking and looked up at me. In his eyes I saw fear and helplessness, something that I don't think I ever truly seen in someone's look before. From his look alone, a surge of adrenaline rushed through me, and I turned around, only to be met by a tall man wearing a cloth mask over his face. He held me at knife point and screamed at me to empty my pockets and toss everything onto the ground. I quickly did as he said, and only became more terrified when he started to forcefully push both me and the guy from the bench off the path and into the woods, leaving everything on the ground and showing no interest in any of it. We walked for a few minutes, going well into the woods, far enough to no longer see the light of the path. Then the guy next to me suddenly shoved me to the ground and started to run in the other direction. The man in the mask surprisingly left me alone and took off after him. I quickly got back up and ran back to the path, hearing and seeing nothing else. The police arrived only a few minutes after I called, but both men were gone, and from what I know, they still are. I can't say why the other victim pushed me down, though it was most likely an effort to leave me behind so he could escape. I don't blame him, but it was a low move. It makes me feel slightly less sorry for him and whatever he had to endure afterwards. What the abductor intended to do is unknown, but him showing no interest in my wallet or belongings makes me feel like it was something extremely awful.